Welcome to the Advancement Podcast. Our mission is to reach the lost in America by advancing leaders and churches so that communities are transformed. Join us as we discuss how to stay healthy as leaders, work in teams, and lead change. Come on, let's advance together.
Welcome back to another episode of the Advancement Podcast. We're so excited that you have joined with us today. Hey, if you will do us a favor on whatever podcasting platform you are listening to, click the subscribe button. That way everything comes to you straight on Tuesday and Thursday. If you can do us a favor, as you have time, go and rate us on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to. Help us spread the word of the Advancement Podcast. If you are watching, click subscribe or like on Facebook and YouTube, and then you will get the videos straight to you on Tuesday and Thursday. My name is Todd. I'm the host of the Advancement Podcast with another flawless interview, or dang it, I messed it up. Intro here with the great, the illustrious, hopefully having a better day by now.
Well,
Timothy
okay,
Ware,
that was funny, but I don't know when did the studio door open?
It was open the whole time, but
I'm so glad there was a background noise during that last episode.
Yeah, you know, even if they could still hear you drinking your water bottle, but you know, OCD, it's a real thing.
Todd, I'm clicking my pen, and he's got quit. You got to stop this.
Well, I could hear it in my ears. You're going click, 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 click. I know you have to have those ADD tendencies.
That's right. I've got my ADD things I have to do. I have to do something.
I guess that's ADHD.
That's the H in it.
Yeah.
It's that hyperactivity piece. I have to disseminate. I have to let some energy out.
Calm the H down, Tim. Okay.
Yeesh. Used to.
We're going off the rails here.
We are. Used to, I would go out. That was one of the biggest reasons I would run, is because it would knock. It would. If I would run 5 miles a day, because it would, and first thing in the morning, because it'd knock the edge off my energy level.
So now, why is it that you don't run anymore?
Because I live in a place where you run across the pasture and the cows are there, or the coyotes, or the wild pigs, or people are hunting, and there's.
Do you wear your cowboy hat and sing, "Oh, what a beautiful morning"?
No, I do. I mean, I do take the dog for about a mile.
Okay.
I take the dog for a walk and stuff, but anyway, we walk the road or the fence line. But
your life sounds like a country song. That's what it sounds like.
There's nothing wrong with that. You just wish you had it.
No, I don't. I need a Starbucks down the street from me, homie.
Baby, the closest Starbucks to my house is 33, 34 minutes.
Oh, I need to pray for you, Tim.
It's good to be. Well, we're going to go ahead and get back into this. It's good today to have Dr. Jeanie Miller Clarkson back with us today. She is a counselor, and she has a counseling center where she works with pastors and ministers in Ohio, and she's a great fan. Ohio.
Hey, the Big Ten starting football.
Of course, she's not an Ohio State fan, though. If I remember from our last episode, she's a Michigan fan.
Ohio. We're on the border of Ohio and Michigan, so we have offices in Ohio and Michigan. But I'm technically about 500 feet over the border in Michigan.
Oh,
See?
wow!
There you go.
So she's a Michigan fan.
No, I don't think she's a Michigan fan either.
Unfortunately, I don't really follow sports, but one time,
Come on.
I had an Ohio State table in my office, and I'm in Michigan.
Oh.
And I found out the seriousness of, that move. So I don't have
your husband didn't help you with that and say, honey, that's not good.
He really doesn't follow the sports either. So I guess we're just kind of the outliers.
He doesn't really follow the sports. All right.
All right. Todd has really struggled, I think, with COVID, because since COVID happened, I just quit watching sports, and I'm not going back to it.
Tonight is Game 6 of the Stars Stanley Cup Final. So
I had heard they were in the final.
The Stars were in the championship. It's fine. It's fine. No big deal. Nobody cares.
That's right. I don't care.
All right.
So anyway, Dr. Jeannie's back with us today. We're talking this series on emotional intelligence and the pastor. Her book, The Emotionally Intelligent Pastor, A Guide for Clergies and Other Church Leaders, is available.
Buy it today.
Yes, buy it today on that. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it through her website, JeanieMillerClarkson.com. Follow her on social media. She's a great resource to our churches and pastors. It's so good to have you back with us.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be back.
She said last time that she was during the break, she was so excited that we called her back. I guess she didn't think that the first time through was very she may not have thought as highly of it as we did.
That was during the quarantine episodes, and
oh my gosh,
we all remember how that went.
Yeah, that was at the beginning of the quarantine, and where everybody was grasping for straws and trying to figure out life. So
I think we're still on survival.
It's true.
I still think we're still there with the first presidential debate tomorrow.
Oh my God.
You're going to have to stay off social media this week. I'm just letting you know. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not on social media.
If you need emotional intelligence, won't be found on social media.
So last time, I'm gonna see if I can segue that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tim. It's fine.
Last time we talked about we asked you to define what emotional intelligence is, and this idea that it's really about first being aware of what's going on inside of us, and it's also being able to pick up on the cues of others and what's going on inside of people so that we can then deal in a healthy way relationally with them. And we spent the last episode, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it, talking about personal insight. And let's just be honest, there are many pastors are more attuned to what's going on with people around them than they are within themselves. And it just creates unhealthy context. And if you're reading Dr. Jeannie's book, she talks about the fact how that is part of what pushes towards some of the high burnout stats that we have in our pastors. I find it interesting that it was some of those burnout things and those that led you to do the research that actually led to this book being written. So that was so helpful in reading it. But one of the things you talk about, Dr. Jeannie, is in this idea of being emotionally intelligent is the idea of personal mastery. And this is the idea of, well, I'm not going to explain it. Why don't you define for our listeners, because I won't get it right.
Let the doctor do it.
Yeah, I'd have to open the book up and read it, and it wouldn't have the.
Well, she wrote it, so let her do it.
Yeah. So why don't you define for our listeners what you mean by personal mastery and how that connects to our emotional intelligence, and so there you go.
Right. Personal mastery is really managing ourselves well. The scripture talks a lot about self-control. Personal insight is where we really get in touch with, okay, maybe I am focused on pleasing people too much rather than looking to God. Maybe I have some struggles with stress. I tend to overwork. Maybe I fly off the handle quickly. We all have something, as far as I know, that we have to work on. And the personal mastery piece is the part where we actually work on it. So we already are aware of it. Now we're going to commit to work on it. And I often think about the diet industry in our country. You know, it's really very simple. Calories in, calories out adds up to weight loss or weight gain. But we have $1 billion industry because we want a different answer. And
wow, that's just like straight to the point, bud.
Stop being fat, Dr. Jeannie.
And so really, personal mastery, it's not really that sexy. It's that, okay, we have some issues. We have to practice doing better. We have to work on it.
It's getting deep in here today.
Now there are some simple ways that I can help you in how to do that. Yeah. But the reality is that we have to take the time and commit to actually doing it.
Well, Galatians talks about, there's over and over we find in the scriptures, you said this idea of self-control and self-discipline. We're really talking in many ways about spiritual discipline, especially when we're talking about how we lead and how we deal with people, and which is a really good conversation, which is a really good concept, because sometimes as church leaders, as pastors, we define our self-discipline often around the idea of, well, did I study? Did I pray? Did I do the things so that I could prepare to preach? And we don't do them around self-development as much. I think that's reflected by the high burnout rates, by the, really, if we're honest, we made a joke. The diet industry is a great joke, but there is a huge number of people who are in ministry who have health problems, weight problems.
It's a high stress, not a high take care of yourself industry. So it lends to being overweight.
So this idea of self-discipline, and that's why I think it's okay for us to use the word spiritual discipline.
Yeah.
That this
absolutely
is a spiritual discipline. How we treat people is an act of our spiritual, how healthy we are, both emotionally and spiritually.
Right. And the truth of the matter is, we need God's help to overcome our own whatever it is, our own faults.
Bear one another's burdens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, good. So what are, all right, I have over my life, especially honestly, I'm 51, and the last 12 to 13 years have probably been the most fruitful times of ministry, but they've also been the time where I grew the most in ministry. And I had people who would say to me, you can't do that kind of stuff. You can't talk to people that way. And that pushed me in mastering some self pieces that I just had ignored for the first almost 40 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I was able to get by on my gift enough. But eventually I ran out, and I had to make changes so that we could go to the next level.
Right. And in, personal mastery, we have to learn to manage our own emotional triggers, which I think we talked about. Some of us might have a tendency to fly off the handle if we feel criticized, or we might have a tendency to become overly stressed and engage in negative behaviors, for example. But I like to boil it down to 3 easy pieces. It's easy to remember. We need to get our head right. We have to get our heart right, and we need to get our words right. And I have some stories to illustrate that, about how we can do
that sounds like the Bible.
That's what I was saying. It's a new concept. Okay, it's scientific, but in reality, the basic pieces are ancient. They're back there in scripture. They're about wisdom, emotional and relational wisdom.
What was it that the Apostle James that he wrote that if you can control your tongue, you're perfect? That the truth is that, and Jesus said that out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth speaks. So the truth is, when our words aren't right, we should be able to backtrack through this heart and head, through this emotion and this spiritual peace. So when our words aren't right, it actually should drive us back to a core peace if we follow the trail.
Let's take a moment and hear a word about advancement. When I met Tim, our church was at 60 people, and now we have a weekend attendance of over 300 people. The team at Advancement can help your church advance. Do you want to see this kind of growth in your church? Then contact the Advancement team at info@advancement.cc. Now let's get back to the podcast.
And so, picking back up on our story of Pastor Bill, we talked about him in our last episode, and he's
Bill.
Yeah, and he's in the book. And if you recall, Pastor Bill was burned out. He realized he's a people pleaser, and it's very hard for him to say no to anybody. It's hard for him to have conversations that could be conflictual because he needs people to like him, and he's become more aware of this. He's gotten more insight. But now he's decided he's going to have to do some work. And the first piece is getting his head right. We have to adjust our mindset because a lot of our emotions actually come from what we're thinking. And so if you read in the book, he talks about what's going on in his head, his self-talk. We all have this narrative going on in our head that we need. It's kind of just like background noise, but sometimes we need to tune into it. And some of the things that was going on in his head is, I can never do anything right, and I can never please these people. So that line of thinking is going to lead him down into feeling deflated, defeated, resentful. I can never please these people. I can never do anything right. And of course, he had to do more digging than that. But
I actually have marked in the book this entire section on self-talk. I thought it was. It struck me personally because I'm the guy who, you talk about the first thing is where you chide yourself for the failure and you beat yourself up. I think there's a lot of people that we do that in ourselves. But then you talk about in here about the idea of revisiting and rehaving those conversations and trying and correcting them and just going back through them again and again and recycling that moment, trying to fix it in your mind and just having the conversation over. And then imagining, well, if I get into it, creating all these what ifs and trying to talk out all these things. And that the self-talk, I was sitting reading that thinking, dude, that's me. I do that. I do that all the stinking time. I do that all of the time. I revisit conversations from months and even years ago when it comes up and it frustrates, and I revisit it and I walk through it again in my head. And then before I go into meetings, I will try to imagine what 25 different scenarios are, and I will try to have the conversation my way to, every time. And, which, number one, if we're talking about emotional intelligence, I've eliminated reading the room. I've eliminated their entire response. I'm making it up. It's a fictional thing in my head.
So you're going in with the predisposed negative mindset. Is that what you're saying?
Or
you're assuming,
or a predisposed positive mindset in some ways. Either way, I've created this scenario. When it doesn't play out, it makes my life harder.
Right.
And I was just amazed. So I want to say that section in your book just struck me really well.
I'm glad that was very helpful. And so sometimes we have to be aware of this self-talk. That's the insight piece. But then we have to reset our mindset. And we do that by analyzing this self-talk and saying, is it true? Is it accurate? Is it helpful? Okay, is it
do you true do that self-talk, Todd?
Yes. Self and I talk quite a bit.
And then what could I tell myself that would be more true, more helpful?
I thought, so analyze the self-talk. It's not that self-talk's wrong, but what we do with it is what makes a difference. So we analyze it and
decide. We often have to make adjustments.
Identify the truth in it.
Well, no, ask the question, is it true? So Pastor Bill is saying to himself, I can never do anything right and I can never please these people. Well, in analyzing that, let's start with the second one, I can never please these people. In fact, the negative feedback that he'd gotten was not that awful. He'd gotten 1 or 2 negative comments, but he had gotten a ton of positive comments. So I can never please these people was a gross exaggeration. So he had to analyze that and recognize that. And I never do anything right. Well, that's not really true either. In fact, he'd done a lot of things right.
Well, I think as leaders, especially in ministry leaders, we tend to focus on, we always tend to focus on the negative thing that someone says because right or wrong, if we're really working the mission of Christ, there's the weight of eternal souls that we carry in ministry. And it's very easy for me to say, well, if I mess this up, then I might mess up somebody's opportunity to meet Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that eternal weight that we hope, or we think that many pastors carry, it adds to the tension around our mistakes, I think, that you don't see in most people across the world, most professions, most leadership roles, and things like that.
And I find, Tim, sometimes I have to help my staff understand that eternal tension. I think sometimes younger staff members, younger people in the ministry don't always understand the eternality of some of the comments that we make. I think sometimes we get a little flippant with what we say, and we don't understand that our words could affect, and how we choose to check our attitude, how we choose to walk in on this conversation could affect someone's eternal choices from here on out. And sometimes I don't think we always understand the true gravity of the positions that we hold.
No, I think that part of what we struggle with in ministry, and one of the reasons what we're talking about today is so important, is because it's very easy in today's world with so much going on for us to lose sight of eternity. To live day to day, to live week to week, and to be wrapped up in this moment and lose sight. I had a conversation yesterday, and I was probably a little strong, Dr. Jeanie. I was at lunch with some couples after church, and we were, somehow the question got around to the upcoming election and things, and I told them, I said, you know what, this conversation, it disgusts me, because my citizenship is in heaven, and I eagerly await a Savior from there. That's what Philippians 3:20 says. I said, so whether who's in the White House, it matters, but it doesn't matter in eternity. That it doesn't matter as much as eternity matters.
It's only temporal. Yeah.
It's only temporary. But I think this idea of asking, is it true, and comparing and really looking at our mistakes, the weight of them when we compare them to potential eternal ramifications. I think in pastors, there's it's so different than everybody else.
Right. And I think, as far the second part about getting his heart right, so there's some more helpful things he could tell himself, like, I'm doing my best. There's always going to be some people unhappy, but I can deal with that. But then the heart right too is remembering, but I'm God's child. I can pray and do what God tells me. I am not perfect. God is pleased with me.
So what I hear you saying is we have to be willing to give ourselves grace. We have to give ourselves
grace and go back to, what does God say about this?
Yeah.
What does God say about me? And then get the words right. And in Pastor Bill's situation, him getting the words right means that he has to work on using the words no. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm not going to be able to commit to that. I need to take a vacation at this time.
Well,
now, for some of our other characters, there were different words he needs to get right. But for him, those are the words he has to get right.
Yeah. I think words matter. We actually did a whole episode on how we did a whole episode a while back on how we communicate matters, because I was good at telling things, but not telling them the right way. And so we talked about that as a transformational piece in my life, that how we communicate matters. And it's not, so it's both what and how.
Yeah.
But so we do the reset by analyzing, and then also we do the heart and analyzing and asking ourselves, is it true, and what parts, and then we do the reset.
And then what we could say to ourselves instead that's more true and more helpful.
And then we get our heart right by going back to the way the Father sees us and what he's saying about us.
What does God say about this or about me? And then our words right. And a little bit of self-disclosure, my struggle is a lot with anxiety and tendency to feel overwhelmed. And I've continued to work on this, especially over the past, this year. And I tend to think, it's too much. It's too much. I'm too tired. And those thoughts really de-energize me. And so I have to tell myself, I get to do meaningful work today. That's one of my new mantras. I get to do meaningful work today. God has blessed me so much. I have so many beautiful opportunities. Boy, that's a total reframe, and it really makes a difference.
I think that's those statements right there, because Todd and I are extroverts, and so much of what we talk about comes from that position. But you're not the extrovert that we are, and
right. I'm more of an introvert.
And for the person who, like my wife, who says, "I just want to stay home," and to be able to say, "I'm going out, but I get to do this for Jesus." There is that reset piece that we have to do. And so I think that's an important piece in us mastering ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of this episode. So Todd, what's your takeaway from our conversation, this piece of it?
Two big things. Number one, self-mastery is the key to all of this. I think it's the key to life. Yeah. Mastering oneself. And we have to get our head right, our heart right, and we have to get our words right. And I think that's true in every situation. I think sometimes flippant and careless words, even in jest, can be hurtful and do damage that we don't realize is there.
Yeah. Well, the guys like me grew up just telling people, "Come on, get some tougher skin, grow up. It's no big deal."
Yeah.
But there again, flippancy, just didn't matter. Really a lack of concern for other people is part of that, which is a heart issue. That's a heart issue. And I think that's another piece as we were talking that I was thinking, when we talk about the heart, it's not just about the heart, how I view myself. Mm-hmm. It's also a piece of how God is asking me to view others, because how I approach others begins with my heart for them. And so I think that's a little underlying piece that I wrote, but I wasn't going to share, but now I've shared. So here we go. All right.
Yeah,
well, Dr. Jeanie's going. thank you for being with us.
That heart piece. Oh, I'm sorry. That heart piece you were mentioning really is important, because remembering our passion for ministry.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us this time. She's going to be back with us for another episode.
Yep.
So don't want to miss that. And if you haven't heard the last one, go back and pick it up as we talk about, begin our conversation on being emotionally intelligent as pastors and church leaders. All right. We'll see everybody next time
on the Advancement Podcast.
If you would like to keep this content coming, all Tim and Todd ask is $1 per show. See how to give, maybe even sponsor an episode or series on the website advancement.cc. Until next week, continue to advance the mission of Jesus.